Hello and welcome to today's Thrive Programme podcast. An episode today that's personally very pleasing because my guest today is a lovely man called Doron, who is now Emetophobia-Free and wanted to come on to help inspire others because you found a lot of these quite helpful in your journey. So do you want to start, Doron, with giving us a flavour for what it was like for you when you were super duper anxious?
Yeah, so lifelong emetophobe, had it from about the age of 7. There wasn't exactly an incident that was a trigger for it. Though I do remember being sick quite a few times as a child. I guess like most kids are, but it became a thing and it grew bigger and bigger and bigger. And the vast majority of my life, it's been there in the darkness. It always felt like it was sort of stalking me. I might have a good few months, but then suddenly it would sort of come out of the shadows. And when I reached out to you, which was in the summer of this year, so in the summer of 2025, I was in a really bad state. It had got completely and utterly debilitating. So I'm a lecturer at a northern university here in Manchester, and I was starting to really not function well because the anxiety around nausea and being sick had become so enormous. I was finding it really difficult to function. I had to get some time off work, which is the first time in my working life that it had got so bad that I had to take time out. And that was, personally really difficult to do, even though my, university was incredibly supportive. And I was living with the most powerful daily nausea that you could imagine. So if anyone's listening and your main symptom is that you just have this nausea, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you eat or you don't eat. It doesn't matter if it's morning or evening, although sometimes late at night it did feel a bit better. But the next day was terrible. And it's the most horrendous feeling where even walking or brushing your teeth or just doing anything really, you just can't escape this terrible nausea. So I had known about the Thrive program for a good number of years. Just to say, I had tried pockets of therapy previously, but they were not tailored to emetophobia at all. There was a little bit of low-grade CBT and a little bit of counselling that I tried when I was at university as a sort of 19, 20-year-old, and then again maybe in my early 30s. And I found it absolutely useless, if I'm honest. And my background is actually in psychology. So I'm not a clinical psychologist, but I teach psychology at university. So I just didn't, I just felt very kind of unconfident that a talking therapy would help. I'd also tried medication in the past, which had helped to some extent, but we got to this stage where really I'd run out of road with the medication and I was in a really, really bad way. So I'd seen Thrive, for years previously, and I was convinced it was not going to help, or that it was a scam, or that maybe it helped some people but not me. But I was absolutely desperate, and I'd come across a couple of your videos, Lucy, on social media, and I was that desperate that I started messaging you, albeit under an alias name. So if anyone goes back to look at your post from the summer, if you see someone called Ben, I to protect my anonymity, particularly because I've got such a unusual name, I just go as Ben basically. And I messaged you, and you sort of said a few nice things about you can get over emetophobia, and I thought, well, you've not met me, you've got no idea how bad it is, and we had a discovery call, and I think I probably said to you that day, you're not going to be able to help me, this isn't going to work. At the time, just before, well, the morning of even meeting you, I was in such mental distress that I'd phoned 111, probably looking for, a strong anti-emetic and something else. And they actually phoned back, didn't they, during that discovery call? And I was just convinced that this wasn't going to help. And I couldn't, it was the first time in my life, I think, where I couldn't really see a way out either. So whilst I wasn't suicidal or even depressed, I was just chronically anxious to the point where I just was starting to slip into a kind of depression, I guess, because I just thought I can't, I just didn't see a way out. Not actively in any way suicidal, but definitely going towards a dark place, probably the darkest place I've been in my life, really.
Yeah, and totally understandable when you're thinking in such a powerless way and you're desperate to try and help yourself out, and understandably you do all the things you can control, like getting a sick note to be off work, ringing 111. You were asking for a different dose of antiemetics. It was the nausea for you that was, if I can just not have that, I think everything's going to be much easier. But
Yeah.
you didn't have the connection. Maybe you did, but you didn't feel powerful to change it between your thinking and your stress levels.
Yeah. Like I completely always understood it was psychological, that it was something that, that there was nothing physically wrong with me. Although you get to the point, I think, where I kind of, it's something we talked about, didn't we, in our sessions, but I ended up going on Reddit, really looking for some answer, some medication, some tablet. And I ended up in like the kind of emetophobia pages. It's pages and pages of people out there. I mean, it's an eye opener because, when you grow up, you think you're the only person in the world that has this slightly weird phobia. And then you see that there are thousands of people right now, on Reddit who have suffered for years and years and years. And I was I was going into those kinds of territory looking for an answer, and going to health food shops and buying CBD oil and just anything that you could get your hands on to try, as you say, to sort of make sense of and control the experience.
Yeah. So you were on the phone to 111. You still had me on the other screen. So you finished that chat with that doctor and you'd arranged a different type of medication. You quite predictably asked him about, is there going to be any side effects to me doing this? And he gave you the medical answer, which wasn't what you wanted to hear. And he wouldn't have necessarily understood the driver behind your line of questioning. But anyway, so we had that chat and you started the Thrive program. What was that then like? How did that feel?
I was so skeptical, and you said to me, "What would life be like without emetophobia?" And I think I said, "Well, it would just be amazing to not feel sick every day and to get my life back." And you said, I think you said, "I think I'm much more." I think what I hadn't really recognised is just how small my life had become because of the emetophobia. So there were things that I was really avoiding, really basic things and things that I enjoy. So like not going to a big shopping centre in case I felt sick, or because I'd woken up feeling sick, therefore thinking, well, I can't go today because there's just no point. And even really small things that I generally enjoy doing, like going to the park or going out into town. I was starting to kind of avoid, I think. And so you said to me, I'm more excited about starting this process than you are, because I was not excited at all. I didn't think it was going to work. So I was just very desperate and thought, well, these people claim to be able to fix me. It's kind of a very, strangely medical way of talking, right? And that I feel broken in some way, and that I'd seen all of the videos. I spent quite a long time looking at quite literally hundreds, maybe thousands, I don't know. I'd seen Margaret's story, which I guess many listeners might know. This was an elderly lady who had emetophobia for something like, was it 75 years,
Yeah,
something like that?
Mary, they'll
Oh,
know Mary.
Mary, sorry,
Yeah.
what did I say?
Margaret.
Margaret, Mary, yeah, Mary's story, and she got over it, and I just thought, well, I just need to do something. I knew that I was absolutely stuck, and that something had to shift. So you sent me the pack, the Emetophobia book, and I started to read it, and I was quite, I wasn't closed-minded. I think you have to go into it with a kind of open-mindedness, but I didn't really believe it was going to work.
Yeah.
And I read the first couple of chapters. It kind of made sense. It's not difficult to understand. Um, but I do think that I wouldn't have been able to do it without a coach. And I know lots of people can do it, and lots of people do just use the book. But I think I needed to talk it through with somebody who had more expertise, and that was really, really useful. So I remember in the book, I think quite early on, it sort of, I think it asks you like how you're feeling right now or something like that. And I remember writing down, powerless, hopeless, never going to get over this. This feels like a mountain. It's impossible. You can't get over it. And had all of these fixed beliefs that we needed to work on. So I think one of our first sessions was about kind of the beliefs that we hold and the lenses that we use to see the world. And I found that really helpful. In our first session, I came away thinking that yes, you guys really do know what you're talking about. I felt that there was enough kind of good stuff in what you'd said and in the book that I knew that if I could apply it, and that was kind of going to be the challenge, that I was going to have a good shot at getting over it. I still wasn't probably convinced. And I remember we talked about lenses. So again, if people are listening, it's the idea that, there's a reality out there, and you can catastrophize, you can put on your catastrophic lenses, and you might not even know you're doing it. And I think I had a very high prescription lens of kind of catastrophizing, and I think I saw, I just felt completely powerless. So you could add another lens onto that, and by the end, I had, a very kind of warped perception, I suppose, of how hard it was or wasn't going to be to get over this. And I remember saying to you that I'm moving house in a few weeks, and I don't know how I'm going to cope with that. It was another pressure on me. And you said, well, actually, you just put a few things in a box. And I thought it was going to be this enormous, life-changing, stressful, kind of inciting incident. And it is about the lenses that you wear. So that was really helpful to challenge the perceptions that I had, including but not limited to my emetophobia.
I wasn't being dismissive. That sounds a bit like I've gone the other way and said, "What's the problem?" But
No, you weren't.
yeah, we had enough rapport by then, didn't we, for me to be able to have challenged and helped you with some of those lenses. And
Actually,
I remember,
on that point, sorry, can I just say you were really supportive, but you also held me to account. Like there were absolute times where you said, you know, oh, you're being pedantic, or you're, thinking about it in this way, and you should do that. And it was the best thing you could have done. Like you didn't just affirm my worldview, you helped me, and also every question I had, and that's why I think it was so helpful to have a coach. Every question I had, and I had quite a few questions, you were able to answer, really well and in different ways.
yeah, no, for sure. So the first session I remember was good. You were still skeptical, but we talked a bit about what emetophobia is, how anyone creates it, how it's a learned thing. So straight away started to give you the responsibility, the power back, and the belief that this is something I've unknowingly created. This is the way that I'm thinking, the way that I'm living my life, the choice I'm making. And after that, you went away and you then sent me this lovely email and said, I'm just going to write up my notes. Do you mind reading through them? It was like 8-page document. And I was joking, wasn't I, saying this is going to be your biography of like the first couple of chapters. But eight pages you had typed up, helping you to process what you'd been reading, what you'd been learning, just making sense of a better sense of what the hell was going on, and that just made it feel like, right, it makes sense. At least I can understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I came away from that first session, and during the session, I thought it was, good and helpful. But when I stopped that evening to sort of reflect on what you taught me, which is the idea that actually emetophobia is just a kind of initial misprocessing of an event, and that it's all these bricks are then built and these experiences are built on top of it, but actually it's just a shaky um, little tiny kind of Lego brick, and you can kind of think about how you might reprocess that, or think about how you built up the wall, and that really provoked me to think, well, how did I get so emetophobic? Like, how did I? What was it? And I started sort of journaling, and it became super. It was the most helpful thing I think that I did in that early stage, was to really understand. And the other thing that we talk about are the fact that I had, as anyone with emetophobia does, shaky psychological foundations. So low self-esteem, which isn't something I would have necessarily have thought that I had. But looking at it, and when you sign up, you do the TQ report, I think it's called, and it was. I mean, my scores were exceptionally low, really, around self-confidence and kind of self-efficacy and powerfulness and powerlessness. So I went away and I thought, well, okay, let me think about my childhood. And actually, the program is really not, it doesn't focus on childhood incidents. It's not about going back in time. It's really very much a forward. It's a wonderful program in that it's very forward thinking, and it doesn't. The book and Rob are very clear that even if you had a really traumatic childhood, lots of people would have gone through that and not developed this particular condition. Um, 90% of people, maybe more, are not emetophobic. So being sick can't be this terrible thing that emetophobes think it is. Easy to say, but difficult to feel. So I went away and I did loads of thinking about my kind of childhood and where maybe my confidence was knocked, and I sort of sent it to you. And whilst it wasn't helpful in terms of, getting over the emetophobia, because that's a forward-looking thing, it was really helpful in me understanding myself a lot better. And
Yes, and
yeah,
specifically that it was never about being sick.
yes,
So in the situations where you were sick, it was how you felt in those moments. You felt like it was an inconvenience. You felt like it was shameful. You felt guilty. You felt like you were being a bit of a pain to your parents, and it was those feelings that you associated with being sick as a child would. So I think for you, it was quite helpful to really get your head around the fact that it was never about being sick. This is about how you feel, and that from early on is really helpful. And that for you, I think, then the next week you were like, I'm back at work, Luz, life is great, oh my gosh, it's like this flip switched in my head, and it's, it was all exciting. And then what happened?
another, what we might call now a blip, but to me, I'd gone. It was so reassuring, that first session and doing that writing, and I felt really safe for the first time, and then magically all the symptoms disappeared. So as you said, every single the nausea had gone, the diarrhea in the morning had gone. My appetite was back to normal, and I just felt brilliant after that first session. And and then a sort of a week later, I just, all the symptoms came flooding back, basically, and I'd completely lost, not really confidence in the program, because I'd seen
Yes.
something amazing, which is that this program had within a week made me feel completely back to normal, but then it wasn't sustained, and that was really the challenge that I then realised that actually all I'd done is, in that first few weeks, is understand myself better, but
Yes.
that wasn't going to help me get over the emetophobia per se, because I hadn't changed my thinking patterns and the way that I sort of see the world. I'd only understood where I came from, which was helpful but not sufficient.
Yeah. And that was pretty much your experience, wasn't it? A little bit up, down, but then gradually, as you were learning more, and we were talking more, and we were able to understand stuff and process things internally and give you the power, the responsibility. What was I thinking? How did my thinking change around that to create that symptom? Those blips started getting a bit less, and you
Well,
started.
I'd seen some things during every week. Something would happen that would blow my mind. Actually, in a good way. Even if I couldn't sustain it. So the first week or two, as I said, did that journaling, felt great. Yes, a blip. The blips felt bad. They didn't feel like blips. They felt like, falling down a mine shaft. But I remember speaking to you, and you were like, "You're in a pothole. You're just in a pothole. It's fine." You think you're in a mine shaft, and because of the way you're thinking, and that was a really helpful metaphor, which has kind of stuck with me ever since. But then you and I know that as you go through the program, you take more and more responsibility, and you think in a sort of internal way. But you'd managed to circumvent a blip. So there was this really bad blip, and I'd fallen down this mine shaft, stroke pothole. But then that cleared up. And that doesn't happen with me because, like many emetophobes, a blip lasts weeks or months. And I had a very firm belief about that it would be, blips for me last at least 3.5 weeks, but they can last months. And so the fact that I'd seen, the symptoms disappear in the first couple of weeks, then, yes, a blip, but then a very short period of feeling unwell. That made me think, okay, there's really something here, and that gave me the motivation to keep working, processing my positives. So thinking about every day, what have I done that's been good. And at one point, I was sending you my positives every single day, wasn't I? And you were giving me feedback. So again, for people who perhaps haven't done the Thrive program yet, the positives, processing positives, are where you reflect on kind of what value you've got to the world every day. What have you done today that's either been good for you, that's helping you on your emetophobia recovery journey, or where a friend said something that makes you feel valued. And so I started to do that, religiously, and that was really helpful, alongside all of the other learnings that I'd had. And yeah, gradually over time, the blips became, less severe, and also the gaps between the blips became much longer.
Yeah. So people listening to this who may be in Struggleville at the moment will be wanting to know, are you over it? And how would you quantify that? Like how can we be sure?
So when did we finish? I guess we finished a while ago now, right?
Just before term started for
Yeah,
uni again, wasn't it?
yeah. So I've got a really busy job as a lecturer in a UK university. So the students arrived back around mid-September, and going back into the summer, I was thinking, I don't know that I'm going to be well enough. Like I don't. I mean, the catastrophic lenses that I was wearing were telling me I don't know if I'm well enough to do my job. What if I'm not well enough to go back to work in September? Am I going to lose my job eventually because I'm becoming kind of debilitated by this? And I have now been back at work, well, for ages, really, because I was back at work in the summer, in sort of, I think I only had about 3 weeks off or something. Um, but I have been feeling so well, the entire, really since we finished, which I think is, a little while ago now. And what are we now? So it's like October the 4th. I think we finished, or I was kind of more or less over it by, I guess, late August, maybe,
Mm.
I think. So how do I know I'm over it? So I absolutely feel that I'm 100 million% over it, which is incredible because I never thought I'd be one of the people to make a podcast. I never thought I would get over it. I never thought that I would even be back at work. I mean, I just have no emetophobic thoughts at all. It's not that I'm suppressing them. I just don't have them. And actually, every single day, even when, even when life is very busy and I've got loads of, work to do and a busy kind of social life and all those kinds of things, I never feel that I have a kind of constant internal sense of feeling free of something, because it felt to me for so many years that there was kind of this thing stalking me. I couldn't really make plans. If I booked a holiday, I was thinking, oh, but will I be well enough? If I, booked any kind of event, I would think, oh, what if it flares up? What if it flares up at that time? And now, one of the things that you teach and thrive is the idea that you control your thinking, that these things don't flare up, they don't happen to you, that you create them, and that's a really powerful learning as well. And therefore, you can manage them. I eat sandwiches with my hands without necessarily washing them. I used to walk around with hand gel. I don't feel the need to. Even, we're going into kind of like, dare I say, norovirus season. It doesn't even occur to me. It doesn't even occur to me to be overly cautious with things like that, which I used to be really kind of alert to.
Which sounds like a dream, and that's what sounded to you a couple of months ago like a dream. How?
Do you know what? It's such a good question, and I've thought about this a lot, and I don't have an exactly clear answer other than to say it was lots of things from the Thrive program that did it. It was learning first, and I feel like I'm going to repeat myself, but it was learning that I was creating this, that this wasn't something that is coming from the outside world. And I always knew it was psychological. That's one of the points I was going to make earlier. I always knew it was psychological, but I didn't think I had the strength to fight it or control it. And actually, it wasn't a difficult journey. There were ups and downs, but none of it was complicated. So that was one thing. Processing my positives, journaling, thinking a little bit about the lenses that I wear. How can I reinterpret an event? Okay, I've got to give a lecture tomorrow. Maybe I'm nervous about it. You know, the old Doron, who might have been, I remember in the summer I had to give a talk. It wasn't a particularly important talk. I've given loads of talks before, and the emetophobia was so bad, and the nausea was so bad that all of the thinking was, I can't give the talk because I might feel sick. I already feel sick. I shouldn't give the talk. How will I get through the talk? Maybe I should cancel the talk. And then learning that all of that is feeding the anxiety, and actually the way to think about it is to try to change the lens, which sounds kind of magical and really easy. One of the things I found really helpful in really understanding that I was creating the phobia and that it wasn't happening to me was to think about someone who has a phobia that I don't have. So I don't have a phobia of needles. I don't have a phobia of spiders. I don't have a phobia of the dark. But of course, lots of people do have phobias to these things. And when you think about those people and what kinds of things keep it alive, you know that it's coming from within them, that they're thinking, oh God, I can't put the light off because, the dark might get me, or I don't know, or, there's a spider in my room, or what if it's under my bed and how big is the spider? And the more that you allow yourself to go down those kinds of thinking routes, the worse the fear about the spider becomes.
Yeah.
And I was doing that with Reddit all the time. I was on Reddit reading about nausea and different tablets, and then reading about a few frightening illnesses like gastroparesis, which I sort of convinced myself at one point that maybe I have that, maybe there is something wrong with me. And the more that you engage in those kinds of thinking, the bigger you build up the monster, right?
Yeah. And I think that was one of the early commitments you said to yourself in that essay that you wrote was, right, there's 3 commitments I'm going to make and whatever. But one of them was, I'm not going to go on Reddit. I'm not going to collude and surround myself and question. And that was a part of you desiring control, wanting to know, wanting to figure it out, wanting certainty. But I mean, you could come across anything in Google, but it's not helpful. That's not science-based. And when you got that strong desire for control, it's the easiest thing to do is to try and get control somehow, somewhere. So for you not to do that, you had to train yourself out and really stick to that. And it feels really uncomfortable the first couple of times, but then you start to realize, oh, it's much quicker to come out of a blip when I don't do that. I've got something here.
Yeah, exactly. I think anyone with emetophobia is, and I think Rob says this beautifully in the book, you almost can't have emetophobia without having OCD. And I had a history of OCD, as a teenager, and I'd managed to get over that, these very kind of intrusive thoughts, mad thoughts. I remember, I'm not scared to admit it, that had these kind of crazy thoughts that I was going to hurt my cat, or I was going to, in the absence of depression, do something crazy like jump off the balcony of the flat where I lived, and I would get these intrusive thoughts, and I'd managed to sort of completely get over that, and I feel exactly the same about the emetophobia. Really, I think that it was a similar kind of process, but partly we're all, or emetophobes are all doing things to keep the emetophobia going. You just don't realize it. So talking endlessly to friends and family about it, constantly body scanning, of course. Do I feel sick? Oh God, maybe I do. What does that mean? Should I take a tablet? Should I not? Can I go here? And then going on sites like Reddit, just looking for answers. Even the thing I've said about the CBD oil or phoning up 111, it's all this desire for control. But the more that you desire it, the stickier the condition gets. I guess the stickier the emetophobia gets, the more life you're breathing into it. And yes, that was one of the key things that I think helped, was just not engaging in some of those behaviors, and then actually very quickly it started to kind of drop away, because I think you fill your time up with other things as well. I mean, it's like as soon as you can re-engage, and again, there's I can't remember what it's called. What's that technique called in the book? At the end of the book, it's to sort of, it's a technique that Rob talks about.
Dream technique.
The dream technique, yes. It shows you how long ago it is that I've engaged with this. So, I mean, just for people who are watching, I used to be on your social media site and on the YouTube, kind of watching the YouTube videos and on the Emetophobia website all the time, because I needed to hear positive news stories to counteract some of the negative stuff. But it's so far removed from my kind of consciousness now that I don't, even when I'm talking about what we did in the summer, it almost feels like quite a long time ago to me.
Yeah.
But the dream technique is kind of useful because it helps you to re-engage with something else in the world, and I think it's just a good reminder of diverting from stuff that's keeping the emetophobia alive.
Nice. How hard was it? How much effort did you put in?
It wasn't really difficult, and it wasn't. I mean, I remember saying to you at some point, I'm going to put 100% effort in, and you said to me, you put in 70%, 80% effort. You don't need to put in 100% effort. I almost think, and this is another thing, I think you can try too hard. It's something else that we talked about, I think you, and again, it's almost like another form of control, isn't it? That if you're thinking all the time, I must get over my emetophobia, so I must get my emetophobia manual out, and I must read all those pages, and I must make sure I implement it, and then I must, it's not helpful in the end, because I must watch all the videos, and then I must actually, you want to put in about, I think you're right, Lucy, I think 70-80%. You want to do your readings, you want to do your thinking, you want to think about your thinking. It's quite metacognitive. You want to think about the thinking processes that you have, but you don't want to make it the sort of absolute goal, because I think that's sometimes when I fell off the bike and you said to me, I think you're trying too hard, and I was like, oh, actually, I think you're right. So was it hard? I mean, no, it was nowhere. I mean, the hard thing was just living with the emetophobia and the way that it makes you think and feel. And so the blips sometimes felt hard in that they felt emotionally like, am I going to get over this? I think from about week 2 or 3, I absolutely believed I would get over it, because I'd seen changes. I'd seen changes in my, changes that I just couldn't imagine. So for many months, maybe even years, I would always have a loose stool movement in the morning. And as soon as the anxiety dropped, and I was kind of on the path, I could see that that just didn't happen on days where the anxiety was so much reduced. Um, but when you do have a blip, it can feel really disorientating. And I do remember, probably midway or even three quarters of the way through, I think we had one session that said, I can't do this. I don't think I can do this. And that was probably the worst moment, because I think I was losing confidence that I was gonna get over it. But we talked it through. I think that's when you said I'm trying too hard, and I just took my sort of foot off the gas a little bit, and then everything just got so much better.
Yeah, I think the other thing you did around then was you listened to Sam, the Aussie guy, on an episode. He'd come on this, and you listened to that, and you were like, "Oh, I think what he did really well was challenge himself every day." And I'm not sure you'd done the Trafford Centre, and you'd been out and about, and you'd done some big things for you on weekends and stuff, but really just that incremental daily stuff. But whether you went off and did that or not, even just knowing, oh, that makes sense, I haven't yet done that yet, just
Yeah.
gives you that perspective again, doesn't it? And gives you, like, you feel more powerful, you feel more hopeful, you're thinking, right, this is something I can go away and do. And then you started doing a bit more. You went off and did that. Was it Spanish?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I love languages, and I decided that I needed to just do more things to put myself in uncomfortable situations. And although I hadn't thought of myself as particularly socially anxious, it was clear that actually the idea of sort of walking into a room of people that you don't know is a little bit off-putting. So I decided there was an open day at a language school here in Manchester, and they had an open day, and I thought, well, this is quite good actually, because I really like languages, but also it's going to force me to engage with people that I don't know, and if I feel sick or not, I'm going to have to manage my thinking, and that's good. So I walked in. I was a bit nervous. It was like a full on kind of Spanish cultural day, and there was this flamenco dancer that they brought out to celebrate Hispanic culture. And I, the idea of dancing, I mean, I've got two left feet, and the idea of dancing is just absolutely horrendous to me. I would rather, I think I said, I'm going to say it, I don't care. I think I said to you, I would rather, be forced to poo in a glass box and have everybody watch me than dance a Spanish flamenco dance. It's so far outside of my comfort zone. So I mean, I'd rather be sick, basically, at that point. I would much rather just vomit it. Anyway, this woman from the Spanish dancer was like, come and dance with me. I don't know why she sounds Romanian, but that's what she said. And suddenly, I just thought, do you know what? This is the point, right? The point is that I'm going to dance and get out of my comfort zone. And I started dancing, and actually, I had quite a good time. Everyone was laughing. There were other people that weren't particularly good dancers, and I just thought, yeah, I'm taking myself too seriously. And actually, it was a really affirming moment because I'd done something that was outside of my comfort zone. I'd survived. I'd actually enjoyed it, dare I say. And that was really, again, another helpful moment in understanding that you can manage your thinking even in situations that do feel desperately uncomfortable.
Yeah, because the dancing's irrelevant, really. It's just your thinking around the dancing would have been creating all the anxiety. Yet when you override that and do it anyway, the anxiety's gone because there's no resistance anymore. There's no protection from the embarrassment of dancing. You're doing it, and your anxiety. I think you'd had tapas, and I remember being on a dog walk, and you'd text me, I've just done this and I've done that, and I would normally, when you said about the ice cube thing, I was laughing, but it was just a really good day for you to go out there, build your confidence, and practice everything that we've talked about, and realize this is entirely in my head.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
multiple times today I've overridden it, and I've come back anxiety free, or most of the day I haven't even felt anxiety that gave you all the confidence to go back into doing your lectures and everything else, and you just knew you could do it then.
Yeah, definitely, exactly that. And you're right that we had tapas that day, and again, it was like a buffet, and everybody was touching it, and I just didn't care. Um, I think, I just managed my thinking. So I thought, I just remember thinking to myself, and it's obviously something that most people don't have to think, but I just remember thinking to myself, you know, no one presumably really gets ill from a buffet, and if they do, they do. And the food looked great, and I wanted it, so I just, ate from the buffet. Whereas perhaps previously I would have wanted to be the first at the buffet, or not gone to the buffet at all, or used hand gel afterwards. And I knew that if I was to get over the emetophobia, it was a commitment that I was going to make to myself, that I was going to test what happens, and nothing happened. I enjoyed it. Did I get sick afterwards? No. Um, did I increase the chances of me getting sick? Probably not. I don't think anybody would have got sick from the buffet. So again, it was building up evidence, I think, as well. And that was another thing we talked about, was just getting evidence that your body is normal and can tolerate all of the things. Because I think I taught myself. I'm sure there must be other people listening that might be thinking, well, I've trained myself not to be sick, or I've been so careful around food for so long that maybe my body is now different from other people's bodies, so that whereas other people might be okay at a buffet, maybe I won't be. And I was able to, test that, and that was also really helpful. It wasn't exposure, because there's no exposure in Thrive, and it was much more about testing that I could manage my thinking than
Exactly.
exposing myself to something.
Yeah, it's not about the situation, is it? That it's about how you're thinking and how you're making yourself feel and the choices that you're making in that situation. So that was very much an internal practice. So you, like most emetophobes, super bright, very intelligent. You speak 5 languages fluently. I can't remember, probably got a first in your degree. So you've worked. Yes, I did.
I did. I did.
So you've worked so hard. What was it? And you practice psychology and stuff like that. So you know a lot of the theory. You knew about locus of control. You'd heard some of this stuff. What makes this different then? What was it about doing this course that gave you what you didn't get from anywhere else?
There's so many things. I think first of all, you guys really understand emetophobia, and it's great. I think, and I mean, it's staggering, and it's sad that there are so many people on Reddit right now, and therefore in the world, who are struggling to access good quality emetophobia kind of care. And I hate the word care because it's quite medical, and Thrive isn't really going down that route. So first of all, it was just knowing that you knew. The book is tailored towards case studies in here and there around the emetophobia, but also, and this was really difficult to accept, but you come from it trying to get people to thrive in all areas of their life, and not just around emetophobia. And actually, I think when you're emetophobic and you come to Thrive, all you want is for the emetophobia to go. And you're not really bothered if you thrive in life or not. You just want to not have all the emetophobic thoughts and feelings, nausea and all the rest of it that comes with it. And in a way, the worst thing about Thrive, I think, from a marketing point of view, is that it's called Thrive, because I think a lot of people prefer Emetophobia-Free. Of course, I am now thriving so much more than I was, and I hadn't appreciated that. But you don't, I don't think, when you're in that initial space. So, what else made the difference? I think I absolutely knew about locus of control and self-efficacy and some of the theories and even some of the studies that are cited in the book, but I hadn't taken the time to apply them to my life. I taught them as academic ideas, not as lived experience. So that was a big change. I think, um, if you do the Thrive program with the coach, you also get access to videos by Rob. They were so helpful. They were calming, and I remember really sort of taking notes, and there were lots of really interesting insights about, again, how you manage your thinking and how blips can be stopped. And there's even a blip recovery video, which is just so helpful because, again, if you're and another thing I think as well is that I think this is true probably for all of the coaches. I can obviously only speak about you, but I hear great things online about other coaches as well. But you held trust that I would get over this when I didn't have it, and you were also basically available almost every day by messages if I needed it. And you don't get that with traditional therapy. I mean, look, you might get 6 sessions of CBT. There's no guide, there's no book that you get alongside it. It was great to have all of the ideas so well scaffolded as you go through the program, and you had the opportunity, you know, you were basically in my ear sometimes, which was great, saying, send me your positives, do this. You knew the path. And the other thing that you said so many times is it's predictable, and I didn't really understand what you meant by it's predictable because I sort of thought, well, everyone's a bit different, and but actually it does come down to 3 or 4 basic psychological ideas: locus of control, lenses, how you see the world, a misprocessing of an event. And once you get people to understand that and to sort of tweak those dials, if you like, it is a very predictable path. And that's why I'm completely wholeheartedly able to recommend it to anybody listening, because it's been truly the most transformative and incredible journey, and it's affected so many other parts of my life. And I'm still on a journey. Like, I'm 110% over the emetophobia, but there's so many other things I think in life where I could thrive more. And even in my job, I'm using some of the principles to, again, better manage difficult conversations and to just manage my life in a different way. And again, waking up every morning with a kind of warm glow because I just feel free of something that, even on good days in the past, always felt like it could catch up with me. And now I feel like, A, I don't think it will, I don't think it can if I continue to think the way I do. And even if it did, I think there's a set of tools that I know I could use to nip it in the bud really quickly.
Yeah, you've got out of a blip enough times, haven't you, to know I'm lacking perspective. This is what I need to do. This is what I'm not going to do.
Exactly.
However tempting.
And people sometimes, I've saw lots of people over the years on the Thrive website say, oh, I wouldn't like to be sick, but it doesn't bother me now. And again, I never really understood how they got there, but I honestly can say exactly the same. I don't even think I'd mind. Like, I don't even think it would be, I haven't been sick since finishing the Thrive program, but I'm really not bothered about being sick or not. It seems like to me now, it's like sneezing. It's just something that the body does, and it's fine. And I mean, it is completely unbelievable that I'm sitting here saying this. And again, I just really want people who are thinking about it to do it, because it is the most brilliant program, and it has totally transformed my life. Not in a kind of wacky way, just in a really good, strong way. I just feel much stronger. I've got elderly parents, and we talked about that I'm kind of worried about, and sort of some caring responsibilities for an auntie who's really unwell, and she's currently in a home, but going to a retirement home was very challenging with the sort of smells, and if you've got emetophobia, going into hospital, and she's sometimes in hospital, is a difficult place to be. Now I go in there, I don't think about it, nothing bothers me. That's more evident that you said to me, how do you know you're over it? And that's another really good test. It just doesn't bother me to go in and visit her. And you see some quite upsetting sights. These are people with dementia. There's sounds and smells that are at times unpleasant. Even though of course the staff are doing their best to manage all of that, but it doesn't bother me. But it did. It
Amazing.
really did.
Okay, so what would be your final words of wisdom if you could have heard something, if the Doron from back in June could have heard something then that would have been enough to convince him to put the effort in to buy a manual, to hire a coach, to overcome it truly, what could you have heard? What would have been helpful then?
Everything you think you know about emetophobia is almost certainly wrong, because if you're suffering from it, you have a particular perspective. You might have been told that you can't get over emetophobia, or you might just think that you have got this, or you've had it for so long. I had it for, something like 37 years. And it feels, therefore, completely inevitable and irreversible. But that is 100% wrong. And I'm living proof of it. But not just me, hundreds, if not thousands of other people who have gone through the program, who have done testimonials. It's all genuine and super helpful and evidence based. And if you're suffering, there is a route out of it. It is the Thrive program, and it won't just improve not improve, it won't just eliminate. And that's actually what it does. It eliminates the anxiety from within because of the way that you're thinking. So if you're on the fence, get the manual, hire a coach, and you will never, it's not something you're ever going to regret.
Nice. Well, thank you so much. Really inspiring, and I'm
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you, Lucy, because actually, you have been like just absolutely incredible in this journey. And whilst I now take full responsibility for my mental health, when I couldn't, you absolutely managed that and got me through. And I couldn't have wished for anybody better. You've been completely transformative, and you've left a kind of indelible mark, I think, a kind of inflection point on my life. So, I've always been grateful to you and the program.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. And thank you for coming on to share your journey, because I'm sure it'll be super inspiring for other people. So,
My pleasure.
thanks very much.